Okay, we're live.
Hey, everybody.
Seth's got COVID.
19.
COVID-20.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing. They think that the 19 means it's the 19th strand because the government created the other 18, but they didn't work as well. Fun fact for you guys.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with the year, like fucking people.
All right, so today we're going to get real down on ourselves.
Yeah, what?
And get real upset and get real sad.
I'm gonna go down on myself.
And talk about the Jonestown Suicides.
Everybody, well, if you really think about it, they weren't really suicides.
We get into that.
You said we get into that.
Just you wait.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready.
James Warren Jones was born on May 13th, 1931 in the rural area of Crete, Indiana.
Ooh.
He would later go by Jim Jones, so now I'm going to call him Jim from now on.
All right, going forward, James is Jim.
His father was a World War I veteran. The family lived in Crete, Indiana until 1934 when they moved to Lynn, Indiana because of economic difficulties due to the Great Depression. The house in Lynn, Indiana was actually a shack and did not have indoor plumbing. Already off to a good start.
Oh yeah, that explains some things.
Growing up, Jones was an avid reader of Joseph Stalin, Karl Marx, Mao Zedong, Mahatma Gandhi, and Adolf Hitler.
Wow.
In his early teens, he developed an interest in religion. Many historians now believe that he gravitated toward his interest in religion because it was difficult for him to make friends as a child.
I wonder why.
Childhood acquaintances recalled him being, quote, a really weird kid who was obsessed with religion and death.
I can relate.
They also said that... Probably not to this part, you can't. They also said that he would frequently hold small funerals for dead animals found on his parents' property and that he once stabbed a neighborhood cat to death.
Well, never done any of that. No, you're right. He stabbed a neighborhood cat to death.
Here we go. Jones's father became an active member in the Ku Klux Klan in the late 30s as it had become popular in Depression-era Indiana.
Jesus Christ.
Excuse me. Jones later recounted how he and his father would often argue on the issue of race and how he did not speak to his father for many years after he had refused to allow one of Jones's black friends into the house.
Oh, so Jim Jones wasn't racist.
Jones's parents later divorced, and Jones and his mother relocated to Richmond, Indiana. Jones later graduated from Richmond High School in 1948. Jones married Marceline Baldwin, a nurse, in 1949, and the two of them relocated to Bloomington, Indiana. He attended Indiana University Bloomington, which was where he had become impressed with a speech by Eleanor Roosevelt about the plight of African Americans. In 1951, Jones and his wife moved to Indianapolis, where Jones attended Indiana University for 2 years, while taking night classes at Butler University, which ultimately led him to earning a degree in secondary education in 1961.
What a busy guy.
In 1951, Jones began attending gatherings of the Communist Party USA in Indianapolis.
Of course.
He had become frustrated with the persecution of open communists in the United States, especially during the trial of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Jones is quoted around this time as saying, "How could I have demonstrated my Marxism? My thought was to infiltrate the church."
That's a really genius idea, actually. Holy shit. So
He wasn't dumb.
So this guy was just a Marxist, is pretty much.
He wasn't dumb. That's the thing. He wasn't dumb. He was fucked up, but he wasn't dumb.
He was a Marxist that wanted to infiltrate the church. Mm-hmm. I'm understanding this a little bit more now.
A Methodist district superintendent helped Jones get a start in the church, which surprised him since the superintendent knew he was a communist. In 1952, Jones became a student pastor at the Somerset Southside Methodist Church, but he later left the church because its leaders had forbidden him from integrating black people into the congregation. It was also around this time that he witnessed a faith healing service at a Seventh-day Baptist church. He observed that it had attracted many people and they were giving a lot of money to the cause, and he concluded that he could accomplish his social goals with financial resources gained through such services.
Oh. Wow, so he faked it to get the wow.
He's not dumb.
That's amazing. I like
So,
this.
Jones organized a mammoth religious convention to take place in June of 1956.
Yeah.
He knew he would need a well-known religious figure to draw bigger crowds, and he arranged to share the pulpit with Reverend William M. Branham, a healing evangelist and religious author who at the time was as highly regarded as Oral Roberts. Jones was able to begin his own church after the convention, and he decided to name it the People's Temple Christian Church Full Gospel.
Jesus Christ, that's a big fucking...
Or the People's Temple for short.
It's like an Iron Maiden album or something. It's like an Iron Maiden...
Jones was still regularly studying Hitler at this time.
Of course.
And he became friends with Reverend M.J. Devine, also known as Father Devine.
Father Divine.
Father Devine advised him of various ways to be able to manipulate his members of the cult.
Nice.
Devine had told Jones to, quote, find an enemy and make sure they know who the enemy is.
Oh, that's the fucking...
Devine advised that would unify the members and make them more obedient to Jones.
That is the biggest thing. You gotta have an enemy.
Find an enemy and make sure they know who the enemy is.
The American government has made proof of this. Genius. Genius. This is genius.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, he wasn't dumb. People just assume that he was just this dumb guy who had crazy ideas and brainwashed people. And to an extent, yes, he brainwashed them, but he was not dumb about it. He knew what he was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so in the 1960s, Jones helped to racially integrate churches, restaurants, the telephone company, the Indianapolis Police Department, a theater, an amusement park, and the Indiana University Health Methodist Hospital. He also set up sting operations to catch restaurants who refused to serve black customers and frequently wrote to American Nazi leaders in disgust.
Wow.
After a fall which required hospital assistance in 1961, Jones was accidentally placed in the black ward of the hospital, but he refused to be moved.
Something tells me this guy's like... I mean, he was fucked up, obviously, but at the same time, he even knew that racism is stupid.
Yes!
Like...
Jones received considerable criticism throughout Indiana because of his integrationist views. Many white-owned businesses were very critical of him, which led to vandalism to the People's Temple. A swastika was placed on the temple's doors, a stick of dynamite was left in a coal pile near the temple, and a dead cat was left on Jones's porch after he had received a threatening phone call. Many historians now believe, though, that Jones himself was involved in some of these incidents to help further indoctrinate his cult members.
Well, of course. Why not? Oh, of course, yeah. What?
Impact, all right. All right, so Jones and his wife adopted several non-white children and started referring to his household as the Rainbow Family.
Ooh.
He also portrayed the People's Temple as a rainbow family. His adopted children included Agnes, who was part Native American, and 3 Korean American children named Lou, Stephanie, and Suzanne. Jones also encouraged his cult members to adopt orphans from war-ravaged countries such as Korea.
Hell.
In June 1959, Jones and his wife had their only biological child, naming him Stephen Gandhi Jones.
Stephen Gandhi?
Yeah.
Steve Gandhi Jones.
And in 1961, they became the first white couple in Indiana to adopt a black child.
Wow. I bet that was controversial at the time, too.
Hell yeah.
I bet he caught a lot of hell for that.
They also adopted a white child around this time named Timothy Tupper, whose mother was a member of the People's Temple.
Okay, so they adopted a child from one of their own members?
Mm-hmm. In 1962, Jones traveled with his family to Brazil with the idea of setting up a new temple location. The family stayed in a 3-bedroom home in Belo Horizonte. Although there was a language barrier, Jones studied the local economy and was positively received by the people of the city. The family moved to Rio de Janeiro in 1963, where they worked with the poor in the slums.
Yeah.
Jones became plagued by guilt for leaving behind the Indiana civil rights struggle and possibly losing what he had built there. His associate preachers in Indiana told him that the People's Temple was about to collapse without him, so the family returned to Indiana in the winter of 1963. Jones told his Indiana congregation upon his return that the world would be engulfed by nuclear war on July 15, 1967, which would lead to a new socialist Eden on Earth, and that the temple would need to move to Northern California for safety.
He lied.
In the early 1970s, Jones began deriding Christianity as a flyaway religion and started referring to the Bible as a tool that was used to oppress women and minorities.
Well.
Jones began preaching that he was the reincarnation of Gandhi, Father Divine, Jesus, Buddha, and Vladimir Lenin.
Hell yeah.
He was quoted as saying, "What you need to believe is what you can see. If you can see me as your friend, I will be your friend. As you see me as your father, I'll be your father for those who don't have a father. If you see me as your savior, I can be a savior. And if you see me as your God, I will be your God."
All right, then. That's when things started to get a little crazy, I feel.
In 1976, later on, Jones stated that he was fully agnostic. So, in December of 1973, here's where things start to go super downhill. December 1973, Jones was arrested and charged with lewd conduct for masturbating in a movie theater restroom near MacArthur Park in Los Angeles.
Aww.
A few days after being released, Jones is on record as telling his temple members that he was the only true heterosexual.
Uh-huh.
But
What?
Jones had banned sexual relations among temple members unless they were married, but he frequently engaged in sexual relations with both female and male temple members.
What a shock.
Jones claimed that he detested engaging in homosexual activity and only did so for the male members' own good, supposedly to connect them symbolically with him.
Yeah, he's not gay. He's just doing it for Jesus.
They think he was bisexual, mainly attracted to women.
No. He's just doing his work for Jesus.
So, in the 70s, the temple experienced exponential growth and was able to open new branches in San Fernando, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. He moved the temple's headquarters to San Francisco to be closer to the radical protest movements, where both Jones and the temple became influential in San Francisco politics. In the summer of 1977, Jones and several hundred temple members abruptly moved to a compound in Guyana after they learned the contents of a news article written about them. The article included allegations by former members stating that they were physically, emotionally, and sexually abused. Jones named the settlement in Guyana Jonestown after himself. So, they're in Jonestown now. So
They're hanging out.
This is when it starts getting super weird.
Well, yeah, they're in Jonestown, and they've been promised all this stuff, but we'll get into that in a second.
So, Jones claimed that he was the biological father of a child named John Victor Stone, but listed temple attorney Timothy Stone and his wife Grace as the parents on the birth certificate. Temple members repeatedly claimed that Jones fathered the child in 1971 when Stone himself had requested for Jones to have sex with his wife Grace in order to keep her from leaving the temple, a term known as defecting.
Defecting?
Yeah. That's what they called it if you wanted to leave. You were defecting from the group. If you left, you were a defector.
Get out.
So, Grace left the temple in 1976 and began divorce proceedings the following year. Jones ordered Stone to take the boy to Guyana in February 1977 in order to avoid a custody dispute with Grace. After Stone himself defected in June 1977, the temple members kept the young child in Jonestown. It just gets weirder.
This is real fucked up for the little guy.
In the autumn of 1977, Timothy Stone and others who had left the temple formed a concerned relatives group because they still had family members in Jonestown. Stone traveled to Washington, D.C. in January 1978 to visit with State Department officials and members of Congress, detailing his grievances against Jones and the People's Temple. His efforts aroused the curiosity of California Congressman Leo Ryan, who wrote a letter on Stone's behalf to Guyanese Prime Minister Forbes Burnham. In November 1978, Leo Ryan led a fact-finding mission to Jonestown to investigate allegations of human rights abuse. Another defected member of the temple, Deborah Layton, provided details of crimes the temple members had committed and the substandard living conditions of Jonestown. Leo Ryan's delegation included relatives of temple members, an NBC camera crew, and reporters from various California newspapers. The group arrived in the Guyanese capital city Georgetown in November 15, 1978. 2 days later, they traveled by plane to Port Ketuma and were then transported to Jonestown in a limousine. Jones hosted a reception for the delegation that evening. The delegation left hurriedly on the afternoon of November 18th after temple member Don Sly had attempted to attack Congressman Ryan with a knife. Ryan was stabbed, but not fatally. Ryan and his delegation managed to take along 15 temple members who had expressed a wish to leave, and Jones made no attempt to prevent their departure.
Oh, so he was just like, whatever, you guys can go.
As members of the delegation boarded 2 planes back at the airstrip in Port Ketuma, Jones's armed guards, known as the Red Brigade, arrived on a tractor and trailer and began shooting at them.
The Red Brigade, huh?
The gunmen killed Congressman Ryan and 4 others near the aircraft. Congressman Ryan is the only Congress member to have ever died in the line of duty.
Isn't that a little shocking to you?
An NBC cameraman was able to capture the shootings from where he had hid near one of the planes. The 5 killed at the airstrip were Congressman Ryan, NBC reporter Don Harris, NBC cameraman Bob Brown, San Francisco Examiner photographer Greg Robinson, and a defected temple member, Patricia Parks.
Defected.
Earlier that year, Jones had installed a PA system that would record to cassette tape with loudspeakers located all around the compound. Later that evening, Jones told his temple members about the killings at the airstrip, speaking through the PA system. He told his members that the Soviet Union, with whom the temple had been negotiating a potential exodus with, would not take them after the murders. This is when Jones told the remaining temple members that they would need to commit suicide, or else the U.S. Army would parachute in and kill them.
No.
Jones was heard as saying that this would be viewed as a revolutionary suicide. He informed the members of the temple that they would be drinking cyanide-laced, grape-flavored Flavor-Aid, which is kind of like Kool-Aid.
But off-brand.
When members cried at this, Jones tried to console them, saying, "Stop the hysterics. This is not the way for people who are socialists and communists to die. We must die with some dignity."
Wow.
Children were given the drink first by their own parents, then the parents took the drink themselves. Afterwards, Jones advised the families to lay down on the ground together.
Jesus Christ, man.
When FBI arrived the next morning, the bodies of the deceased were located all around the compound. Jones was found dead on the floor in the main compound building where he had been speaking through the PA system. He was laying on a pillow near his desk with a gunshot wound to the head. An autopsy later revealed this gunshot wound to be consistent with suicide.
Yeah.
Above his desk, there was a sign that read, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it."
Uh-oh.
In all, 909 inhabitants of Jonestown died of suicide by poisoning, 304 of them being children under the age of 15.
Yeah, and a lot of people also got shot.
This resulted in the greatest single loss of American life in a deliberate act until the 9/11 attacks in 2001.
Fucking Jim Jones, man.
Jim Jones. Jonestown.
There's a rapper called Jim Jones, too.
Yeah, he didn't do that, though.
Nope, he just, he took the guy's name. But, all in all, you have to be pretty smart to pull all that off. I feel like he needs, some respect there. Not only that, but he clearly wasn't a racist. And
that's the thing.
He spoke out against a lot of civil injustice, but at the same time committed a lot of civil injustice. Yeah. It's just proof that you could become a hypocrite if you get way too involved in what you're doing.
That's the thing, man.
Let it eat you alive.
So yeah, that is the story of Jonestown.
I feel like he wasn't in his right mind near the end. I feel like he got away from what he was originally trying to do.
He did.
And he didn't even realize it. He just got engulfed in all that. That happens to a lot of people, too. I mean, completely normal for that to happen, but just the fact that a ton of kids and people died because of his idea, and how many times the idea changed from, we're an organized Christian association to the Bible actually being bullshit propaganda to, harass women and colored people. And then he goes on to state that he's agnostic later on. He's just not consistent, but somehow still gets people to believe in his cause, even though it's not a consistent cause, which kind of blows my mind. Like, how can you do that?
It's kind of like, it's weird. Isn't it amazing how all these cults, God tells them to, have sex with everybody?
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah,
it's kind of like they just want to fuck everybody.
Yeah.
And they need a reason to justify it.
He needed a reason to justify his homosexual feelings, I feel. Mm-hmm. He needed to, because he didn't want to accept them. That happens with a lot of people, too.
So, yeah, that, a lot of historians think now, he never admitted it, but they think he was bisexual, mainly attracted to women, but they do think he had a sexual attraction toward men as well.
I mean, that's obvious.
But I think, like you said, he kind of tried to fight it, and then he found a way to,
convince himself.
Have it make sense in his own head of why he was doing it.
Exactly. Instead of just being like, I like the cock.
Yeah.
Which would be...
Plus, I mean, that's still, late 60s to mid 70s. It still wasn't a very open thing.
Yeah, but it would be a lot better than killing, a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. Getting beat up in the street would be a lot easier than killing all the children.
You can find the footage that I talked about. You can find that on YouTube.
You can hear the speech.
Yeah, you can hear the whole speech. You can find a bunch of this on YouTube. They recovered the tapes that he recorded the night that they all committed suicide. One thing I forgot to leave out. I didn't forget to leave it out. I forgot to add it in.
Yeah, there we go.
They would have these things in Jonestown. They called them White Nights. And it was, he had spoken to his temple members about some form of suicide at points anyway. Mm-hmm. And he would have these night raid things, and he called them White Nights. And it was like practice runs for what to happen if an emergency happened or if they needed to do the revolutionary suicide early. And it was actually a year before the Jonestown incident occurred. He had, on one of those White Nights, he had given everybody beverages, and after they drank them, he told them that there was poison in it. And a lot of people just took it like, oh, okay, well, this is it. all right. But a lot of people got upset, and he did that to try and judge who would actually follow him.
No, okay.
The ones that got upset, he became kind of sketchy of, because he was like, well, they didn't trust me after I had done it, so I don't know if I can truly trust them.
Jesus.
And a lot of the ones that had gotten upset were among the people who tried to leave with the congressman that night. So yeah, it's wild. There's a lot more to the story too. This is just like the highlights.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot more of that you can find. There's numerous documentaries that you can find on Netflix, Hulu, YouTube. And I mean, you can...
Our YouTube channel.
Just doing a Google search will take you to thousands of websites with...
just endless information.
Yeah, just crazy amounts of information about this. I mean, it's just
You can
ridiculous.
go on the government websites. I forgot which one. It's like a public recordings and stuff like that. You can hear the recordings if you want.
And this was only 40 years ago, 45 years ago. Like, this is not like a crazy amount of time has passed.
It's not old news, man.
It has not been that long since it happened, and there are still cults, not quite as extreme as this, but there are still cults like this that exist.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's still cults that I'm sure people still believe in whatever he was saying.
They still have active members.
There's no doubt.
Of the People's Temple.
It's fucking crazy the People's Temple's still going.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you want to, like, see what it's all about.
Yeah, they still have, they are still open in Los Angeles. They have a building there still.
It's fucking crazy. They still meet there and stuff.
I don't know if it's super active. I
Right.
think they may just have it kind of like a museum type thing now.
You can show up and just look at all the fuck shit that happened.
But it's still active. You can become a member.
That's wild.
Yeah.
You can become a member just for fun.
Yep.
I'm gonna do it.
But that's the story of Jonestown. I hope y'all are super sad now.
Yeah, me too. Go drink some Kool-Aid. Not Kool-Aid. What is it?
Flavor Aid.
Flavor Aid, yeah.
It's got to be grape.
Grape Flavor Aid.
Grape Flavor Aid. Good times.
I'm gonna put vodka in.
Fun fact, that's where Drink the Kool-Aid came from,
Oh,
obviously.
God. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. I remember when people used to say that at work and I wanted to smack them because it's not funny, for one thing. You're not being funny. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Shut the fuck up. I'll drink whatever I want.
If you're meaning it, like, seriously, I can get behind that. Like, I know it's all about how you use it.
That is true.
If I'm telling you that
You're being lied to.
if I say the coronavirus is a deadly virus, and then you say, but don't drink the Kool-Aid, man. Like, if you say that in retaliation to a fact, that's when I'm like, you're using that wrong. You're using that wrong. Anyway, hope y'all enjoyed that, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.